workplace. And Caroline, as I'm going through these, if you have any thoughts or like examples of people that you come up with, feel free to share. The second one or reason to relaunch would be a change in industry. If you feel like, okay, I'm not in the right industry or even the right role, this can be scary because you might feel like you don't have the right experience and don't know that new industry and how do I get into it and how do I be successful. It could be that you need to bounce back after being laid off. This can be a blow to people's confidence, and they don't always know how to handle that in a job search. Or it could be a recovery that you need to make from a misstep. And I really liked this article. It was in U.S. News about how to survive a career mistake. If you've made either a small snafu or a large blunder and you need to kind of relaunch things, whether it's, relaunching your brand or gaining confidence again with your boss, sometimes we need to do that as well, okay? So Caroline, do these make sense for you? Are there any others that you could think of in terms of relaunching?
Those all make sense, Hallie. I think that covers it.
Okay, cool. And please know, everyone, that these steps are relevant for you whether you're in these categories or if it's in a different way that you're thinking about relaunching your career. They'll be relevant for that too, okay? So again, here's my boat analogy. And I want to just talk for a moment here first about the foundation you need to start with in order to take the right action. I mentioned that a few minutes ago, before we even get to the action steps. Because our clients, 85% of them, usually say that they are their biggest obstacle. It's not something else externally. Yes, we have external obstacles. For example, like, we want to remain financially stable, of course, and we, have a certain lifestyle or a family to support, and we need a certain salary. Of course, those are all practical things we need to consider. But 9 times out of 10, a lot of times our clients will say they are their biggest obstacle, whether it's their lack of confidence, their fear, or lack of being assertive. And we want you guys to be like the boat on the left, okay, not the boat on the right. Okay, I know that's kind of funny, but this is my boat analogy here, okay? So how do we do this? So first of all, you need to think about the most common obstacles that happen for you, and they may or may not be on this list, everybody. This is basically a list that we see in terms of obstacles in our clients most commonly. When we survey them at the beginning of coaching with us, this is what they report and what we observe. They might be unclear about their direction, there's confidence issues, they might not be being assertive enough or willing to be assertive enough. That might be hard for them. Fear of making a change, procrastination, or it just might flat out be overwhelming for them. Caroline, have you seen these and the people that you've worked with before too?
Absolutely. Hallie, with the confidence, career areas change, and sometimes the fear of getting not having the most current skills for a specific career area, or just sheer fear of reinventing themselves, so often happen. And of course, the procrastination element, I think for many of us, think about making these changes, but then actually following through can be challenging.
Yeah, and I know sometimes when people, when I talk with my clients about this, I think sometimes they're like, yeah, I want to get to the action steps. Like, why are we talking about this, right? And here's the deal, everyone. Take a look at this next slide. We all can understand and know from professional athletes, opera singers, anyone, else that's high performing that we've seen before. We've seen them like listening to their music, their, iPod before they dive into the pool or whatever it is, how important that attitude is. So you need to deal with these mental obstacles first, because as we know, your attitude affects your actions, which in turn affects your outcome. So you need to deal with that part first, just as a foundational piece, all right? So here's the good news. It's possible. It is possible to relaunch your career. 98% of our clients give us a high satisfaction rate in terms of coaching, and they achieve their goals. So it is possible. And I do want you all to know that I'm not being Pollyanna here either. It does take time and effort, and we're going to talk to you about the steps you need to take. But it is possible to relaunch your career successfully. And I wanted to give you just a quick success story here, because I thought this was so great. It's a quick example of how it is possible. If you look at this quote here from one of our clients, she went from hospital administration to working in social media consulting. Other examples of people that we've worked with, they've gone from financial advising to marketing. from being a financial analyst to a medical device salesman, things that may seem like really big leaps, everybody. And again, it took time and effort, it took educating themselves and networking, and in some cases, the person specifically who went from a financial analyst to a medical device salesman, it took him at least 2 years to make that transition, but he is so thrilled. And he just conducted a lot of informational interviews, he networked with people, and he worked his way into an organization and demonstrated to them that he had the capacity to be a salesperson and was able to educate himself accordingly and as needed on the product. Caroline, does anybody come to mind? And it doesn't have to be, I was just curious, but I always have people ask me, okay, what's the most dramatic change from somebody that you've known? I mean, I would say these are my most dramatic changes that I've seen. Any come to your mind or not really?
Well, I'm trying to give that some thought. You know, in a lot of cases, in most of the client interactions that I have, people are even looking to make a change back to a field that they were in previously, or into management from a individual contributor, or even the reverse of that. So I can't, dramatically, I can't think of anything, but there certainly are those ideas from individual contributor to manager, or I've decided that I would prefer to go back to the more technical work. And that's probably what I see most typically.
Yeah, so more of like a course correction as opposed to a dramatic change.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Well, and so guys, that's really good, Caroline, because remember, this is relevant for either of those. It doesn't have to be dramatic. And I do want to say one thing, and then we'll go to the next slide too about that, is normally people are so unhappy with what they're doing, if that's the case for you, that they feel like they have to make more of a dramatic change than they actually do. So we kind of end up in a way like talking them off the ledge a smidge and being like, okay, wait, let's think about this rationally. So in some cases, everyone, your relaunch may not be as dramatic or intense as you think it needs to be. You just have to think about it practically and a little more rationally, okay? So take a look at this real quick, and then this will be the last slide before we get to the action steps. I just wanted you all to know that you're not alone, okay? I thought this statistic was really interesting, how often the average person changes jobs. And that's a lot. 11 is a lot, okay? This comes from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, and I think it's BLS.gov. Caroline, is that right?
Mm-hmm. I believe so. I'll make sure while we're talking.
Okay, cool. It's BLS.gov, everyone, and it's just a really helpful website, not just about, you know, the state of the economy, if you will, or, you know, of labor in the United States, but on sites that are there but also related or connected to it, like onetcenter.org, O-N-E-T, center.org, is another great site where you can look at possible career paths if you're looking to make a change or even a slight course correction. And, oh good, it's BLS.gov, that's perfect. Mm-hmm. That you can research different possible options for you and see what they might be like, okay? So it's a great resource to think about in terms of relaunching, helping you with your direction. Okay, so let's look at this next slide here, and the very first step in order to relaunch, being clear. So we all know this, right? It's something like 80% of success is being clear in the first place, okay? We need to have a clearly defined goal, whether it's a new direction you want to go in, whether it's getting back into the workforce, whatever it is, you need to have a clearly defined goal and action steps to get there. Oh, and here we go, everyone, the onetcenter.org, that is one of the sites I just mentioned too, so that's perfect. So there are two basic ways, and there are obviously other ones, but two ways that we like to have our clients get clear about their goals and required actions. So number one, you want to do some online research to either learn about new career paths. You can do that on ONetCenter and mypursuit.com, okay? Or reading blogs for people who are re-entering the workforce and, you know, need to understand what that industry is like and what the new trends are. You can also read people's LinkedIn profiles who are in industries you're curious about and or want to get back into and how to get there. So one of the ways I like using LinkedIn is reading people's profiles to see, okay, what are the steps they took? It's another way to kind of use LinkedIn. And the second way to get clear about your goals and the action steps you need to take are to work with others. So finding people for support and education, I just happen to call that your dream team. You can, you know, call it whatever you want. I like to be fun with it. and working with others to get support and ideas. So you can find them in lots of different ways. LinkedIn groups for specific industries. I've actually found with clients that meetup groups are getting much more popular. I remember however many years ago meetup.com started, but I have found clients are able to find industry-specific and helpful, more professional groups on that website as well, or just local associations for your industry, okay? And ways that you can find these people for support on your dream team is, and I actually would like you all to think about this right now and write it down if you can. Think about and find 2 people in your life, whether it's friends or family, for brainstorm or former coworkers, whatever, for brainstorming ideas, to practice your elevator pitch with, and for accountability, to help keep you, focused and moving forward, like we talked about before, so the fear doesn't get in your way. And the other thing you can do in order to find people for support and to learn more specifically, this one would be more for, education-wise, I think, is informational interviews, if you look on the slide here. To learn more about industries you're interested in, you can find out how to break back in if you've been out of the workplace, okay? And we'll talk more about informational interviews. It's kind of a tongue twister about those in a moment, because I realize sometimes those can seem intimidating. And if you look here as well, everyone, there's some links for informational interviews here on the slide as well. And I wanted to give you a quick example, and then Carolyn, feel free to share anything that you want to add here too. But I had a client in California, Tim, and he needed to get a little bit more clear on his goals and his action items. He was getting there, and he decided that he wanted to be the CEO or director of an assisted living home. He was let go from his previous job and out of work for about 6 months. It was pretty tough. And one of the things that he needed to work on was his confidence. He needed to figure out, okay, how do I talk about, being let go? And we came up with a party line, that it wasn't a fit, that his former boss, there was a change in management and it was no longer a fit for him and the culture was no longer a fit, which is what happened, okay? So he came up with, this is exactly what I need to say, so that he would be confident about it and it wouldn't stump him when he was in an interview, for example. So he practiced how to say it confidently and clearly in front of the mirror to make sure that not only did he have his clearly defined goals, but also that he was more confident. Does that make sense, Caroline?
It definitely does, absolutely. I'm working with a young man right now, an alum who is a technical degree holder, an engineering degree holder, who is interested in transitioning to the field of finance. And he is going to be conducting over the next 3.5 weeks, has decided to go to New York to learn more about the firms and the different types of positions and how his skills might be transferable or what he might need to do in order to get himself there. So that's a really good recent example of someone really realizing fairly early on that the choice that he made was not exactly the right one for him major-wise, but that he can use some of those skills into getting into a position that he wants to be in.
That is such a great example. And if I can piggyback on that for just a moment, I've had clients do that, everyone, and I want to suggest it to you. Even if, so one client example would be someone who actually wanted to move from Chicago to LA, where she was originally from. She was a lawyer. And she just basically, after we were coaching and talking about it, she basically scheduled a trip about 4 months out for a full week. And she contacted everyone she knew there and set up meetings and informational interviews. She contacted law firms and said, hi, I'm planning to move on X date. Can I just meet with you and talk about the state of the industry there? Not necessarily asking them for jobs, but she also set up a few interviews as well. She got a job and moved. Now, I'm not saying it's always that easy, but the assertiveness is really, really important, okay? Oh, and I'm so sorry about that, guys. Let me get rid of it. Okay. All right, so it's really important to be assertive like this. And even if you're not planning on moving somewhere, I also had another client go to New York and talk to people at the Wall Street Journal in order to learn more about what it would be like to be a writer and how to get into it, okay? So let's take a look at this. This is our ideal career model, and this is for people who need to find their direction and know the right fit. You will get a copy of this PowerPoint at the end of the presentation today, everyone, via email, so you'll be able to have this model with you. I want you to think about this, especially for those who are thinking about making a career transition and changing industries. This is a great thing to look at in order to know what the right fit is for you, okay? All right, so let's talk about being confident and how to handle that. So first of all, it's a mental game like we talked about before regarding attitude, okay? And the way to be confident is to do these three things: to manage the fears that hold you back, and anything else like procrastination, not being assertive enough, whatever it is that holds you back, you have to identify that first. But you also, everyone, need to understand your talents and skills and understand what you bring to the table. What is your brand? You will have greater confidence when you know what you bring to the table. And the third thing is here is to enhance your skill set. So one of the ways in order to be more confident is to enhance that. Like, do you need to go back to, take a class in Excel or something, new software, in order to feel more confident? And also think about what is transferable to your new industry, for example, as well. Caroline, any other ideas about how you can better understand your talents and enhance your skill set?
I think that enhancing skills is such an important part of repositioning in consideration of how you might re-enter a career area that you've been in previously or relaunch into something entirely new. Just being willing and flexible to plug into all sorts of different kind of trainings and re-engaging in the field is so great. And it doesn't have to be a new 4-year degree or graduate degree necessarily. It can just be a seminar where you are visibly expressing interest in learning the most up-to-date information on in a field and engaging in that, and even mentioning that on your resume. So thinking of that very flexibly is important.
Yeah, I think so too. And a couple of slides, actually, I'm going to show you a couple of, well, there's actually one, and I'll mention a few more, everyone, of places that you can go, or online websites where you can get either an online certificate for something. And there's lots of free online courses these days. And some of them are better than others, of course, okay, right, because they're free. But I actually have a client, Tara, who she got a certification from, it was Coursera.org. And it was a very valid one because it was from a reputable school. And she put that on her LinkedIn profile and on her resume. And it helps enhance what she brings to the table, her skill set. So there are ways, everyone, to kind of think outside the box in terms of the education that you can get. I also had a client, I just thought of this too, and then we'll go to the next slide, but I had another client who was a recruiter in IT, and he wanted to get into human resources. And at first he thought, I don't want to go back to get an undergraduate degree, and he wasn't willing to go get a master's necessarily either, okay? But he was able to find out about a certification in human resources and took that instead and was able to make the transition, okay? So let's take a look at the next slide here. So in order to, let's just touch on this for a moment, okay, and we'll keep going to the next steps here. But in order to be more confident and identify if you have any fears, if that's the case for you, one of the things you can do with your dream team is determine, okay, how do I handle these fears? And do you need to read books about it or articles or whatever? Or it could be something short and sweet and simple, like when you think of relaunching your career, what words, thoughts, or feelings come to mind first? It was so interesting because I went to a workshop years ago for a full weekend, and one of the things that the people were talking about was a financial workshop, and he basically said, okay, when you think of money, what comes to mind first? And there were some things positive that came to mind for me about money, but plenty of negative things. And those were my fears about it, okay? And I wanted to give you, and actually let me say this first. The bottom of the slide here, you want to identify the effect of that fear and how do you behave as a result. Do you not take action, or do you not take enough action, or does it kind of ebb and flow, whatever it is, or are you not as assertive? So be very clear about the effects for you so that you know exactly why you need to address it. And here's the quick story I wanted to share when I was thinking about this beforehand. So I had a client, Katie, in Atlanta. She was a stay-at-home mom, and she overcame her fear of changing back to academia. She was there before, then had a job in private industry, and she wanted to go back to academia again. And I talked to her about getting bold, and she did. She connected on LinkedIn with someone who worked at the University of Charleston, in the department she wanted to work for. She had actually already applied for a job there. And after she connected with this person, she realized that he was actually the head of the department. And she was, at first it kind of threw her off, and she thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But she plugged on and let him know that she applied for the job. He responded to her and actually gave her advice on her application. Okay, so you just never know. When you overcome your fears and you're more assertive and you just ask for help or connect with someone, you never know what you're going to get out of it, okay? And sure, you can get plenty of no's or people ignoring you. I get that. It's kind of a law of numbers. It's like sales here, but still, you never know if you don't ask, okay? Caroline, does that make sense?
It completely does, absolutely. You never know unless you ask.
Okay, cool. And sort of, let me just, we'll move to the next slide, but I wanted to bring something up that I thought was interesting because a client said it on a group this week, that her son-in-law actually got a job from LinkedIn. He was just on LinkedIn. He had a great profile, the right keywords, and a recruiter found him, and he got hired for the job. It was actually here in Atlanta. He was moving from North Carolina. So just as an aside, everyone, how important this networking thing is. You hear it all the time, and I know it sounds cliche, but the more assertive you are about your networking, the more likely it is you're going to make the change you need to sooner than later, okay? So in order to, we're still on tip number 2 here, everybody, and in order to better understand your talents and what you bring to the table, here are just a few tips to help you do that, okay? You can take a career assessment. We tend to like strengthsfinder.com. It's great. It's $10. You get a lot of info from it. You can interview others regarding your strengths because a lot of times we discount what comes naturally to us, and if we ask other people, it will help enormously. Caroline, are there any other assessments that you like and that you all use in your office even?
I think there's some interesting implications for the Myers-Briggs type indicator, which we offer here in the office. So that might be a possibility too, in case you all on the line would be interested.
Okay, good. That's a really great one too. I like that one a lot. Okay, and then let's talk just for a second about enhancing your skill set, because everyone, we talked about that a moment ago. One of the other websites in addition to Coursera.org is lynda.com. We talked briefly about maybe graduate school, depending on your situation, might be the right thing, or a certification, whether it's in person or online, those things might be appropriate. And the way everyone, and I did just want to say this too, because I think before, you invest the time or energy and money in terms of education, you want to say to yourself, okay, is this the thing that's going to get me where I want to go, okay? And so informational interviews, again, and looking at people's LinkedIn profile, to see what their career path is and what their qualifications are, those are ways that can tell you if that's the right move for you or if it's something else. And you can point blank ask people, is this a requirement or not? Do I need to do something else? And they will help tell you what's necessary, okay? All right, so number 3 is to be communicative. And so this is critical in terms of your relaunch. Obviously, we need to let everyone know what it is that you're wanting to achieve, whether it's a change in career path, getting back into the workforce, etc. And I want to just say this too, because you hear this kind of cliche as well about networking can happen anywhere, but it's really true. One of my clients got an interview from his child's, or through his child's daycare provider. There was a connection to another parent, and he just happened to be talking to her about it, and he got an interview that way at a local architecture firm. So you just never know. Caroline, have you heard any other funny networking stories? I've heard of, I had a client from Boston who went to like a Red Sox viewing party here in Atlanta, and one guy sent him like 10 job openings after that. I mean, these social events too can be that way too.
Absolutely. I think that, we have a really great structure through Georgia Tech of the networks and affinity groups, and perhaps you don't go into a program or game watching thinking this might be a great opportunity for me to meet my next networking contact, but the truth of it is you have a great commonality with people that are involved in those groups. Conversations lots of times shift towards professional interest, even if the point of the program or event is not career networking per se. I really do think that can be a great chance to be open to those types of conversations happening.
Yeah, you just never know. And sometimes I actually think we do better at the networking when it's casual like that because we're not on the spot, you know.
And less pressure, yes.
Totally, totally. So think about that, everyone. It doesn't, I mean, we said association meetings and all of that, and granted, in some ways, yeah, those might be more lucrative, but also consider social events too, you never know. And then look at the second one on the slide here about highlighting your strengths. I just wanted to point this out. One of the ways that clients have, that I've worked with have been able to highlight their strengths a little bit more, but also stand out from the crowd, is creating a one sheet that highlights what they bring to the table. So for example, one of my clients, John, he has a document that he sends along with his resume, and he brings to interviews regarding his leadership philosophy. And another one of my clients, who is a graphic designer, she put like links to some of the samples of her work and referenced some of the projects that she worked on. Now, you don't want it to be redundant from your resume, everyone. It's, you know, meant to be a standalone different thing. But obviously on your resume, you wouldn't put your philosophy of something or leadership style, management style necessarily, but it's a great thing to do in order to stand out, okay? So that's just something I would suggest. And, oh, and the other thing, and then Caroline, if you have anything to add along these lines too, feel free. But what I also have had clients do is come into the interview whenever possible what they would do in the first 90 days on the job, okay? Even if you're not exactly sure what it would be, everyone, take a stab at it and take a guess. It's incredibly impressive to an employer if you've actually thought that through and said, okay, in my first month, I would do these two things, all right? And then the last tip here, tapping into the hidden job market, there's actually 2 slides on this just really quickly. The hidden job market, we all know, is those unadvertised positions, okay, that we find through either recruiters or networking. We've talked a little bit about informational interviews, okay. Networking is still the best way to get a job. Between like 70 and 80% of the jobs that are landed out there are done so through the hidden job market. And I mentioned earlier that I know that informational interviews can sometimes be intimidating to people, but if you leverage, for example, the Georgia Tech Alumni Association, and you put in your subject line, you know, fellow Georgia Tech alum, that person is much more likely to reply to you and give you time, okay? So one of the ways you can kind of get past that is to start with those warmer leads, people either you know, friends and family, et cetera, or that they know, or your alumni association. And there's a little quick clip here, and again, this will be in the PDF that you get from CBS News about how to tap into and leverage the hidden job market, okay? So I wanted to mention just really quickly, we do have products on our site, and if anyone needs additional assistance with anything we've talked about today, we do a complimentary consultation. You can contact us there at the link below. Happy to talk with you about our services and if they're a fit for you. So let's take a look at this last couple of slides here. There's just 2 more. And I want you all to just pause for a moment here and take action, and we're going to move or think about taking action, and we're going to move to the Q&A portion of the time today too. But I want you to think about first, okay, from these 3 steps, where do you fall short the most, okay? Work on the ones that are missing or lacking for you more than others. And I want you to think about 2 action steps you'll take in the next week, like, okay, I'm going to get on the Alumni Association website and search and find 2 people to connect with. Or I'm going to put together my, you know, find 1 person on my dream team and work on my fears, whatever it is. Okay, so just think about that for a moment. And Caroline, do you have anything you want to add? I feel like we kind of monopolized the time here today.
I will say one thing I thought of just in reference to a program we have upcoming, you all, is the Alumni Career Fair. And if you're thinking of relaunching your careers into an entirely different area or just a semi-different type of position, think about the Alumni Career Fair as an option when you're looking to explore. Number 1, have some conversations with a variety of different organizations, see what they have to offer, how you might be a fit. It just could be a really great way to test out waters in a way that you really can't with all the online applications that you need to do in today's job market. Just might be a unique way to explore some different things, and we can help with positioning you as a candidate for a new area or in using new skills that you haven't maybe been recently using. So just keep that in mind as an option, the Alumni Career Fair coming up on April 14th.
Wonderful. That's so great. And it sounds like you have a ton of wonderful employers, Caroline, clamoring to get in, which is so wonderful. That's good.
We do. We do.
All right, so let's take a look at the last slide here just to kind of wrap things up, and please feel free to compose and start putting in the chat box, everyone, your questions. I wanted to leave you with this quote in this slide. I use this often in my webinars, so some of you may have seen it before if you've been on these. This is the quote that got me through the obstacles that I had in relaunching my business and even starting it in the first place and making transitions. So we always want to think about, everyone, that the greatest risk in life is not taking one. All of these things that we talked about today, they involve some element of risk, some smaller than others, some larger, right? But what you need to do is learn how to push past that as much as possible. So thanks, everyone, for being here today. We'll open it up for Q&A. And thanks for being patient with the technology. I don't know how to turn off my chat stuff, apparently. I'm not the most tech-savvy person. It's like good that I'm even on the webinar in the first place. So.
Thank you, Hallie, and thank you all. I have a question that's already come in. Hallie, let me relay this to you. Considering this person is considering entering the workforce after re-entering after 15 years. So the last time that they applied for a position was actually before email was common. How important are exact dates of employment from 20 plus years ago? Will a guesstimate of those months and years hurt? I would imagine that just the years would be fine at that point. What are your thoughts, Hallie, on how she should present this, past work experience that does indeed, is a period of time ago?
Yeah, I agree. I think years is fine. The months, especially when it's so long ago, the months really don't matter nearly as much. It's more important to have those for the recent ones. So I think years are fine. And remember, everyone, that if it's so long ago and it's not relevant to the job that you're applying for, in a lot of cases, it's okay to leave it off, And you can mention it in the interview if you have to. It's not like you're lying or something, but real estate on your resume, so to speak, is precious. So you want to use it only for things that are relevant.
Yes. And I think in a case like this, Hallie, and see what you think, there may be opportunities to account for some leadership that you've had in the community or things like that may be, depending on what you're pursuing now, may be very valuable, and also account for more recent time frames. So we could talk about some hybrid ways to present that on the resume that doesn't have to be your typical chronological sort of format, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think those things are valid and can be relevant. And even, for example, with MBA students that we'll work with sometimes, and right after they've graduated, they can't say, I've had, the past 5 years of work experience.
Right.
We'll put their coursework on there and their projects because that's what they've been doing. And in a lot of cases, it's relevant. So you need to put it on there, everyone. Totally fine.
Let's see about, we've got someone who's been out of work for almost 6 years. Any specific advice for reentry regarding getting sort of past the human resources persons that might be scanning that resume out just due to the, the more recent time frame?
Sure, I know. And it's hard because it's the black hole in the HR department sometimes, right? So one of the ways, this is where networking can come in handy. If you can try to find two things: A, a connection in that organization through a friend of a friend, even if it's kind of a loose connection. And that person, for example, would be willing to walk your resume down there to HR or to the hiring manager, even better, and say, hey, I know this person applied and I've looked at their resume and they seem qualified. Can you at least put it on the top of the pile or whatever? Or there might be a chance that you can get in touch with or network your way into who the hiring manager is. There's no magic wand here, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes that's what you have to get through and that's all you can do. But if there is a way to try to network your way in, it's kind of like wiggling your way in, it's worth at least trying that. And if
Absolutely.
At one organization, you might be able to do it in another one.
Yes, try to get in touch with those people that are in management positions of the roles that you'd be applying for are functionally doing something similar so that you can get a connection within the organization rather than maybe exclusively going through the gatekeepers.
Yeah, exactly. So do your best, everybody, and know that it's a common issue for people. And there is
frustration. So Hallie, I've got a question coming in. What is the latest trend in behavioral questions? And I'm assuming from an interview standpoint, I'm seeing those really still consistently with certain organizations for sure, attempting to find out whether you have relevant experience or experience that transfers into the type of role that they'd like you to do, and kind of getting a real sense of what you've done in the past rather than dealing in generalities or how you would answer questions. Do you have any perspective on the latest trends in behavioral questions?
Well, I honestly, I can't say that I know if there is even, a latest trend as of the past several years. From what I understand is that employers still typically use them. And what you need to do in order to be prepared for those is have your stories, like 5 give or take stories of success, of challenge, of when you dealt with an unhappy client or customer, even of a time when you made a misstep, and what you do about it now to overcome that mistake, okay? And so they will ask you those instead of just saying, okay, what are your strengths and weaknesses, which some people still will, but they'll ask you instead, what's your leadership philosophy, or tell me about a time when this happened. And so instead of being, I guess I want to say as direct, they're asking you these other questions, behavioral interview questions, in order to also get a sense of how you think and how you problem solve. And in my opinion, those are the latest things. There are questions I've heard more recently where, employers ask them to kind of almost throw you off a little bit. And I can't think of any examples right off the top of my head, but I still think that it's the STAR stories, I believe. If you all Google that, S-T-A-R, you'll find out more about what those stories need to be and what they need to entail.
I think that's a great recommendation. I always, when we're working with clients on behavioral interviews, and again, some companies will go have an interview that is entirely based off the history that you mentioned in your resume, right? And they'll just consistently ask questions. Tell me more about this bulleted point, or when you were in this position, instead of the behavioral framework. But having your stories prepared and really thinking through the details of how you either were successful in something, or something that, if it is a negative-based question, that's asking you to sort of uncover trouble that you've had in the past, think about the ways that you worked to improve that situation so it did ultimately exhibit a strength. That's very important.
Yeah, and what you do about it now, it shows that you've learned, and you know that you're proactive about things, because we can't pretend that we've made no mistakes and that we're perfect. No, they know that. So
I've got someone asking about a resume. Let's see here, left some time ago from a major corporation to be a stay-at-home mom. We can help with that, absolutely. In terms of forming a resume and working with you on that to come up with what needs to be included, what should be included at that point. For example, including the fact that you graduated as an honor graduate may be good, but you don't need to worry about having a grade point average at this point. But what things that we could include to make that a valuable document for you, absolutely. We can work with you on the resume. So just reach out to me personally, to that person. Let's see, I've got another question. Does it make sense to volunteer or do technical work free for companies? Or does that make you seem too desperate? I think that sounds wonderful to that person. What do you think, Hallie?
Yeah, I do too. So what I would say is that it's a great way, or it can be a great way, to gain experience and just be mindful of a couple of things. Number one, what is your goal? And state that to them, and or make sure you get what you want out of it, okay? Sometimes we can control that, sometimes not, but as much as you possibly can. And then when you go into it, know the time frame. So okay, I'm going to do this for 3 months or whatever in order to achieve my goal. Not to be, stingy with them at all, but just so that it doesn't linger for a really long time to the point where you're frustrated and you feel like, okay, it's time for me to move on. So just be clear about the time frame and kind of the boundaries around it that would work for you and also with them.
Absolutely. In fact, to this person, we do have an alumna, Heather Rocker, who has done consulting work and has done programs for us actually in the past, and has had a blog on strategic volunteering and really using that as a tool to catapult you into your next type of role that's going to be successful for you, for learning or whatever, making connections. So absolutely, I think that is a very legitimate way to gain experience and networking connections you might not already have.
Yeah, what a great topic. I love that.
Looks like we have one more question, Hallie. Was laid off due to poor business conditions. How to find more opportunities with same or better pay in desired geographic or industries. Strong record of success in multiple industries and roles. Have been working informational interviews. Got great resume feedback. Learned many industries are in trouble. So do you have any recommendations for this person? Looks like the main gist of it is the same or better pay in a specific geographic region, and how you might go about finding that. It sounds like maybe a lot of the things we've already mentioned in terms of making connections and trying to find opportunities through those doing things in the same functional area. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say yes, the similar things we've talked about. I would see if you can identify recruiters perhaps, because here's the thing about the salary piece is, number one, you need to figure out if it's realistic for that to happen. So I would do, you know, some salary research search. Oh, this is what it was. I stumbled because I was trying to think of Glassdoor.com has salary research, everyone, but also there's a website called Payscale.com. Does that sound right to you, Caroline? I think that's
absolutely. I use it very, very frequently, actually, to find out, because you guys, there is a big disparity in salary numbers from one geographic region to another based on cost of living and other factors, honestly. So, yes, that is a great resource, Allie.
Yeah, so think about that. Not to be depressing to the person who asked the question, but you want to find out, okay, is it even possible? And the reason why I said recruiters is when you talk to them, they're the ones that have the job openings and know what's going on, you know, and you can also try to find out from them or from people who work in those jobs, like Caroline just mentioned, okay, is this realistic? And then if you need to, you can adjust your search as appropriate.
And then this person says specifically a strong record of success in multiple industries and in roles. You know, if you can maybe revisit some of those, and some of the reasons that people have made relaunch changes in the past is, hey, this industry is actually doing a whole lot better than what I'm currently in, and maybe I want to put myself in a more stable position, and looking at some of those industries where you have had past experience and seeing, are they experiencing a better health overall is a good thing too.
Yeah, may need to think about a change in direction if necessary too.
Okay, that and we'll send out the strategic volunteer blog for sure. I did get a question on that, so we can certainly do that. And that looks like to be the last of our questions for today, Hallie. Thank you all so much for contributing. These were some great questions.
I know, awesome. Thanks everyone for being here. Really appreciate it again, and hope you have a great weekend.
Hope you have a great weekend too. Bye-bye.
Bye.